But I'm actually here today to present material drawn from an article manuscript that I'm preparing with one of my undergraduate students at the University of Texas at Dallas, Megan Cantwell. Our article is titled Disability and the Crisis of Accessibility in Digital History. And this project began a couple of years ago where Megan, a talented student and a committed advocate for people with disabilities, discovered the troubling fact that every winner of the American Historical Association's Roy Rosenzweig Prize for Digital History, every single project that won this prize failed to meet federal accessibility requirements under the Americans with Disabilities Act. Now, all of the projects who have won this award offer important insights into how digital tools can transform our understanding of the past and broaden the reach of our scholarship. However, ableism limits that reach. And this problem extends beyond just a few prestigious prize-winning projects. There seems to be little awareness or consideration of users with disabilities when historians evaluate digital history work. I'm through the first 10 years of the digital history reviews in the Journal of American History, starting in September 2013. The first 150 reviews on digital history projects show a real troubling lack of consideration of accessibility. Reviewers are encouraged to evaluate projects on 5 criteria: content, audience, digital media, creators, and design. And this last standard of design explicitly asks, quote, how accessible is the project for individuals of all abilities? In the first 150 reviews from the Journal of American History, exactly only one addressed this question of accessibility. So I'll shout out Joshua Catalano's review of the fantastic and mostly accessible project, the Indigenous Archive Treaties Explorer, which is accessible at digitreaties.org. It's a great project. But Catalano was, again, the only reviewer of the first 150 to consider disabled users when evaluating the project. So it is a frustrating reality in the history of disability that the burden of enforcing accessibility is usually placed on disabled people who have to create and then defend their own rights, most often through litigation. And indeed, this was the case when the question of whether disability rights really applied in the digital world, a question that was ultimately settled in 2014 when the National Federation for the Blind successfully sued the ebook company Scribd. This verdict explicitly established that purveyors of digital content are legally required to make materials accessible lest they violate the Americans with Disabilities Act. But even after this victory against Scribd, it was still sometimes difficult to determine what exactly it meant for a resource to be accessible in digital environments. Now, the leaders of tackling this question and defining digital accessibility is the Worldwide Web Consortium, an international organization that is generally referred to as W3C. And W3C calls their accessibility standards the World Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG. In order to meet the WCAG 2.0 standards, which is what is the legally required threshold in the United States, websites must be perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. Each of these 4 criteria have dozens of sub-guidelines that must be met. So, if we are digital content creators, how do we know if our work will meet these standards? Fortunately, there's actually a fairly easy way to determine whether a digital resource is in conformance with the WCAG. The Institute for Disability Research, Policy, and Practice at Utah State University has an initiative called Web Accessibility in Mind, or Web AIM. Everybody who is interested in digital accessibility should subscribe to their newsletter and keep an eye on their work. It's really remarkable. Web AIM at Utah State University. Among a host of other impressive programs, Web AIM has created the remarkable Web Accessibility Evaluation Tool, often called the WAVE tool. Today, this tool can be used either by placing a URL right into the Web AIM toolbar here, or for even better results, you can add a free extension to Chrome, Firefox, or Edge browsers. If you do this with just a push of the button here you see in the top corner, users will see the analysis of any web page. This, for example, is analyzing the Chronicling America page for the Library of Congress, which you'll see is totally not in conformance. It has 138 accessibility errors. So just pushing a button will show you how many errors a web page has, and if you click on the individual things, it will let you know exactly what the problem is, and it'll even explain to you, give you suggestions on how to fix it. Employing this tool on most digital history projects reveals a frequency of shortcomings that amount to what I would argue is a crisis of accessibility, or to use the words of Megan, digital historians seem hella ableist. To be fair, I have been part of the problem. I'm the co-founder and co-editor of the online U.S. history textbook, The American Yop. Several summers ago, we used the WAVE tool to evaluate all 618 web pages of our content and discovered dozens of improperly captioned images and hundreds of small but consistent formatting quirks that would stymie screen readers. It took us about 2 weeks of full-time work to fix all of these issues. It was tedious, but it was never difficult. Now, according to the WAVE tool, we have the only online U.S. history textbook that meets the standards of the WCAG. So in conclusion, the disability rights movement has a history of courageous activism against recalcitrant ableism. And these stories too often play out against a backdrop of crushing indifference that's usually only punctuated by litigation. No one is actively moderating digital history projects for accessibility, certainly not the reviewers in our leading journals or prize committees. Unsurprisingly, then, our record is one of mostly failure. Fortunately, it doesn't take that much work to ensure that our work is accessible to all. It's mostly just a matter of whether or not we care, and I hope we do. Thanks.